Okay, I really appreciate the introduction, Anna. I'm going to just go over what the summer writing masterclass entails, and to just let you know that this is one part of a bigger program for Ivymind, and this is one of our great offerings throughout the years that we've had for many, many years, and we've found some really great successes with our Ivymind students when they submit their works to contests and to competitions, and also obviously to amplify their writing skills. So again, thank you so much, Anna, for the introduction. And she may have said that I am a teacher, a writing mentor, and engage in counseling. So why does Ivy Mind promote this master writing class? Well, our goals are to promote, like I said, better writing practices, and that writing is still important. So we want to teach those writing skills that are necessary to be imaginative, but also to use those skills at school and to establish voice, how to use figurative language, and all those skills for those different genres that young people could be exposed to. And also, a big one is obviously to add to the resume. So, whether you're age 13 to 18, it's really good for just adding to that resume for college and promoting submitting to teen writing magazines, those New York Times contests, which is an internationally recognized contest. Scholastic is also a very big contest as well, and many more. So we will give students the options to and the recommendations to publish or try to be published um, in certain publications. But we have lists of very reputable publications outside of these as well. And so after each lesson every week, that's what we try to do. We try to promote for our students to submit their pieces so they can add to their resume as well. And so every year, to teach this class. It's always been very super productive. Students are very enthusiastic about it. I feel that it's very enjoyable. And so, again, every year students win contests and submit for publications after this workshop series. And also, because it's a master class, obviously we're also looking at higher level assignments, but assignments that are not too difficult either. And we'll be looking at rhetorical devices and real world examples. And some of those skills that we'll be enhancing are those higher order thinking skills with the language. So creating, using information to make something new, evaluating, judging the information, so students become writers, but also learning how to evaluate their own writing, analyzing, so breaking down the content and looking at the relationships between what the task is, the writing task at hand, as well as the relationship with other skill sets, applying this new information, understanding it and grasping the content. And another skill that they learn through learning how to write well is remembering and recalling facts that are necessary. And, students, whether they are their first language is English or not, this is a class that is for everyone in, amplifying these literary skills. And hopefully the biggest goal with Ivy Mind is to inspire students to write. And I thought this was a really great quote to start writing no matter what. The water does not flow until the faucet is turned on. It's a student who doesn't write all the time. Maybe they have never been so inspired to write before. Hopefully, this will be a class that will inspire them to get pen to paper and to do something that might be a little bit even out of their comfort zone, but to know that it will help them in the future, help them improve their literacy skills, their writing skills, as well as add to their, to their resume. So when is it? Miss Anna already went over that, but what do we learn? So the goal is to prepare students to submit their works to scholastic writing contests. You can start looking into those and seeing what the guidelines are for those. But each week I will be discussing which contests they could submit to. New York Times personal narrative writing contest. There's also a New York Times review contest, a STEM writing contest as well, which we can talk about a little bit too, as well as the editorial, which they actually changed to the open letter this time. And so we'll talk about what that entails. And each week, students, as Miss Anna had said, can finish at least one piece of writing based on the category that I teach each week. And that students can send their writing to Dr. Che, and we'll go over that later. And we give specific feedback for each student. So every student is given that feedback to take a look at, to consider, and they will have mentors helping them along the way. So every student will feel served in that way. And so after each class, each student can submit their work each week to get feedback and get written instruction for how to make it better, what they can do to improve, but also what parts they did really well. And so they get that feedback right away. And again, Miss Anna told you what the schedule is, so make sure you take a look. Hopefully, I will be able to meet many students this year, as we do every year, from June 26th to August 14th. And so it's once a week, Wednesdays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, which is obviously different for Beijing time. And so again, we will be giving tasks each week. So our goal is for students to understand the task, information, to come up with ideas, because originality in their thoughts are still very important in education. Being able to take positions, being able to plan their writing, and being able to proof their writing, to look over the feedback that's given from our mentors, and then to hopefully at the end of this whole thing is to publish that work, is part of our goals. And so the looking at our prose. Prose means paragraph form, so writing essays, verse, which is poetry form, and dialogue, which is writing plays and drama, which is always a really fun assignment. So the first lesson that we'll do on that first week are the memoirs. These are my favorite. They're the personal essays. This is where students really get to prepare for the future writing, even when they have to write personal essays for college. And what is a personal essay? A personal essay is an autobiographical essay that relates a significant personal experience of the essay writer. And so these essays are often very much assigned in US and international high schools. And college English courses also ask for personal writing. But also in the future, it can be a requirement of a college, of a graduate school, or even a job application. And so many universities and many jobs, they want to hear a student's or a person's original voice. With the advent of writing assistants that are out today, it's still good for our students to develop these skills, and that universities and other entities are still valuing original writing. And that's what our goal is to help promote original writing. And so in that class, we learn the memoir. Memoir is a very famous genre in America in particular today. And so you're not just recording a series of facts, but for that particular essay, which has those memoir elements, is that you're choosing one existential significant event to illuminate this and talk about how it was meaningful to the student's life. And so students are going to learn certain strategies. They're going to learn pre-writing strategies, how to write gripping introductions, story arcs. I'm also going to teach the mission statement, talk about text structure, how to use proper word choice and vocabulary, bodies of the essays, how to develop those, time sequences, narrowing the focus to a personal experience, creating emotional journeys, and showcasing personal growth, and how to write reflection. And so we really focus on the three basic parts of a text: the introduction, the development, and the conclusion, and also looking at referring words, substitutions, word associations, and text connectives. Also focus on paragraphing and sentence structure, which again are skills that are still very much alive, and still very much expected. Okay, so that will be our first lesson, will be on memoirs and personal essays. And I also have in this PowerPoint some personal essay excerpts from an Ivymind Scholastic winner. And if you just look at the first paragraph, you can already tell that this student uh, had their piece, had been given feedback on it and to submit it, and became a Scholastic winner. And so you can kind of take a look at this. I'll just read the first couple of sentences. It was midsummer as howling gusts whipped up clouds of dust in the sweltering heat. Golden sunlight slanted down, reflecting onto the surface of the rocky brook. But I stared at the water with nothing but emptiness. Walking along where the brook becomes the river, I could barely see the necks of the swans on the embankment, twisting together, forming a heart. The wind blew so furiously that the water folded into violent ripples and mercilessly divided the swans. Sighing, I recalled the heartbreak I felt. It was sunny, but the bleakest day when he drowned. And so this seems very, sad. Something is coming up, but you can tell that this is a personal narrative because it uses the pronoun I. And you can tell that this student really focused on creating an introduction that will want other readers to want to keep reading and to become interested in it. And so this is a product of what we have helped students create and submit. And again, this was a Scholastic winner, a gold winner. Um, and if you'd like to see the whole essay at some point, please feel free to let us know. In our writing class, we will be writing a review. I know that one of the parents had asked about writing a review. And this is always a pretty enjoyable lesson because it's where students learn the art of giving an opinion and giving a formal opinion based on evidence. And so students always love to give their own opinions on things. And in a review that they might write for Scholastic contest in particular, but also the New York Times has a review contest. In our class, I'll be showing how to write a book review as well as an art review, but it can also be applied to film, movies, and other types of genres. So I will also be presenting brief, but I will delve deeper into how to do a book review as well as how to do an art review. Um, and so again, you know, if you take a look at some of the skills that we will build, it's considered informative writing as well as persuasive and descriptive and analytical. So look at all these skills that are going to generating. They'll learn how to give information, to describe that information, to analyze and critically analyze that information. It means breaking it apart and saying, this is why it's good, right? Or this is what we need to look at. So you do it in a critical way, not just rehashing or summarizing what the book was about or what the art is about, but breaking it apart and analyzing it and giving an opinion. And then even recommending whether it is a good piece or not for readers or viewers to take a look at. There was one example from a student who reviewed the book Hoot. And he said, I would recommend Hoot to other readers. I enjoyed this novel for several reasons. First, the characters were realistic. Second, I was entertained by Carl Hassan's sense of humor. Finally, I could relate to the conflict experienced by the characters. This book taught me that it's important to take care of our environment and animals that are in. I also learned that young people can make a difference in the world. All in all, if you're searching for an exciting, realistic fiction novel with a little mystery and humor thrown in, you've found the perfect read in Hoot. Now, again, this is just the introduction, really. It gets a lot more involved and sophisticated as the essay goes on, as the review goes on. But that's what we'll be doing in class. We'll be talking about examples of what makes a review effective. And so we'll definitely look at those samples and talk about them and, amplify those skills. Our third lesson, which is our third week, is critical essays. Now, this is definitely a favorite amongst the students because just like the review, you get to give your opinion, but you do it in a little bit more of an argumentative way. Of course, it has to be backed up with support and evidence, and we're going to teach which support and evidence is the most effective, most logical. But they also get to be a little bit more emotional in these pieces as well. And so this year, they changed it this year. It's called the open letters instead of the editorial. But it's still considered critical writing, and that means that students will be writing letters to whoever they're writing letters to, but they will submit it to the New York Times to be published. So let's say that it's you're writing to the FDA, or you're writing to a professional corporation where you're trying to get them to change something about their practices, or alerting them to something that the writer is concerned about, a consumer maybe. And so these are critical essays. And some of these skills that are covered in this class is I would teach how to do persuasive techniques like ethos, logos, and pathos, which are based on Aristotle's art of argument. We're going to learn how to do letter writing, which is, again, you can pretty much find a template online, but that is not going to help with the effectiveness of the writing itself, right? So we'll not only learn the structure of the letter writing, but also what makes it effective, what kind of words should be used, where these words and ideas should be placed in the letter, and also how to explain and interpret information, how to debunk the opposition. So students who really love to do debate class or know how to debate or refute the other side, but we'll also learn that, and we'll take a look at argumentative techniques. And one of those biggest techniques are those analogies, making those, finding similarities between their argument and something else. And so there's some really big skills that are going to be covered here. And again, not in debate, you might deliver it, through a speech, but in our class, we're learning how to deliver it the best on paper. And so this was one from to the Video Gaming Commission, where a student is kind of talking about different video games and why we hold grudges against video games, and trying to argue that video games are culturally relevant. And so I don't have to read all of this, but I do love this second paragraph where, he says, regardless of your relationship with video games, it is an indisputable fact that they deeply influence the human side of ourselves, the humanities, through movies, films, music, and art. Even Robin Williams' character, Mr. Keating in Dead Poet Society, said that the humanities are what we stay alive for. Yet video games, a form of art, are still not given accolades when it comes to adulting. So, students are able to choose a topic that they care about, or that they're just interested in writing about, and write to, a panel or a commission where they can, you know, uh, express their opinions about these topics. In our fourth week, we will be writing poetry. Now, this is something that is a lot of students have a tough time with. But it's definitely an open area where you can submit to almost any magazine, online magazine. You can publish on Teen Ink. There's so many platforms for poetry. And so, what is poetry? Poetry, as it was described, is the history of the human heart, they say. So it's the place where you can really express your feelings and emotions about a topic. But it's also very structured, some of it, besides free verse poetry, which we'll also learn about. But if a student wanted to write, let's say, a sonnet, which was perfected by Shakespeare, or even Edmund Spenser, who had his own type of sonnet and more formalized. It's a way for students to practice a structured way of writing as well. And so it can be free verse or it can be structured. I'm going to introduce both forms in our workshop so students can explore this type of writing. And again, they may have never written a poem before. And so this is a really great way for them to be creative. And again, they're expressions of thought and feelings. And it's really connected, like I said, to some forms, but um it's just a really great way for them to experiment with rhyme and meter. So these are some of the skills that they learn. Form, how to create titles, figurative language, word placement, texture, and so much more. And so once they learn how to, let's say, create an original metaphor, and that's something that, you know, um, you just can't find on anything that's generated, right? Creating your own metaphor, or coming up with your own imagery, or figuring out which lines you'd like to repeat, or personification. So all of these poetry tools will be taught in our workshops. Um, and again, we have some really great contest winners. This one was called Monet's Pond. As you can tell, it has the this student did win, and they also published on a couple different websites. As you can see, it refers to an artist, um, Monet. And I'll just read a little bit of it for you. This is one of my favorite poems written by an Ivymind student. Monet's Pond, you said, was your favorite. In Giverny, we sat by the water lilies. I held my wooden guitar with my bleeding hand, steadily plucking the strings of fate. I glanced at you, in desperate need of love. You assured me with your short strokes of paint and turned away. You asked me if I ever loved you, while stippling a blooming water lily into my lungs. Painting in zealous despair, you asked for more love, squeezing your brush tight. You shed a few droplets of zephyr and looked away. You asked if you loved me enough, holding another withered lily in your impressionistic hand. I looked at my guitar strings one last time, tears slicing through the bronze strings, snap, and pushed you deep into Monet's pond. And so again, this is really teaching students where to put their words, where the best positions on each lines are. And again, this is different than prose. Uh, the paragraph form, this is more verse form, right? And so, it's written in line form, and also just considering word placement, and a really great way to become a lover of words and how to use them effectively for that kind of emotional appeal. Lesson number 5 is another favorite. besides the personal essay. This is more fiction, though. Okay, so the personal essay, even though it was paragraph form, that was more nonfiction, where the student is writing about a story from their own lives, whereas flash fiction is going to be a fictional story, which means that it's made up, it's imaginative. And so flash fictions are stories under 1,000 words, and we teach students how to create the perfect, flash fiction story. What kind of punchline do you give at the end? And it also teaches like word economy. It's also called microfiction. And so actually it can be anywhere between 300 and 1,000 words. There are some people like uh, Ernest Hemingway. He wrote one sentence and called it a short story, and I would even consider that to be nanofiction, as well. And so it's kind of that subgenre of fiction and short stories. And these are very popular nowadays. And some of the skills that we learned are how to respond to what they call nano prompts. We learned juxtaposition. We learned how to condense our story arcs. What that means is from the beginning, the middle, and the end. Um, the introduction, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. How do we condense that into a short form and still get the same effect? And so, if anything, students are taught clarity, how to write with clarity, how to write with conciseness, right? With every single sentence and every word matters. They also learn what we call punchlines, I guess, in humor, but here the punchlines kind of come at definitely come at the end still, and they are sort of surprising. And so it teaches students the art of punchlines and surprising. And we also learn this formula, A, B, C, D, E. A is for action. You kind of start a flash fiction story with action. You introduce the conflict right away. B is for backstory. You give a brief context or setting of the story. C is for character. They do still have to have characters, but not too many because it is a short piece. D is for development, to move the plot forward. We teach students how to move the plot forward. And E is for epiphany. That's that realization or that punchline at the end, um, where either the character has a realization or the reader has a realization about what is being said. And again, this is a really fun assignment, but also teaches some very, very important skills in terms of conciseness. This was an award winner from last year as well. As you can see, this is the whole story right here. And so it's called 55 Miles to China, and she actually based it on a famous short story, 55 Miles to the Gas Pump, which were part of the Wyoming Tales of Annie Proulx. Um, and it emulates it in some style, but not in the darkness of it. And so I'll just read a little bit of it. Mother Chang and Hoven and hand sewn barefoot, boiling dumplings next to a shattered window, barren flower boxes and rats jumping across the pile of dishes from a week ago, peers once every minute at her phone to check for a call from her son, but she never, never takes the initiative to call him first. At night, Mother Chang, leaving her bed for a bowl of warm water from the kitchen, fumbles to open the kitchen door and alarmingly finds herself unable to lift her hands. Her body shudders, sleeves drooping, floppy arms, and tumbles down to the floor. Richard Wong, watching Netflix in his dorm, glances at his clock as the episode ends. 9 p.m., so 10 a.m. in China. His mother must be awake. He has called Mother Chang 3 times this week. Each time he asked her how she was doing. She responded with smiles and warm reassurances. Richard Wang's thoughts are dismantled by his phone ringing noisily, and he lunges towards his phone. Your mother is in the hospital for her third stroke this week. She begged me not to tell you, but I feel that I must. Just as he had suspected, Mother Chang had been hiding her illness from him. Now, again, what makes it shocking is that she never told him, right? And it kind of talks about a parent's love for their child and also shielding them from some of their realities, so they don't have to live in worry, right? But there are a couple different messages here, right? Whether you believe that that's a good way to be or a bad way to be, maybe you should tell your children the truth or whatever the case may be. This is really a story that causes you to think about things, and think about that relationship between a mother and a child. Okay. And that they're kind of separated by distance, right? All right. In our sixth week, which is lesson number 6, we're going to learn how to write a short story. It's a lot like flash fiction, but you have more space. Even though it's called a short story, you have a lot more time to develop characters. Not as long as a novel, not as long as a book, but it can be more than 1,000 words. So a work of fiction that's a little bit shorter and more limited than the novel, but longer than the flash fiction piece. It usually focuses on one important event in the lives of smaller number of main characters. You also get to know the main character, called the protagonist, a little bit better. And so we're going to teach students how to create a protagonist, how to create conflict and really evolve that conflict and come to some resolutions. Although you could do a cliffhanger, we're going to teach students how to write various endings for a short story. And also understanding the author's purpose. So the writer has to have a purpose, and we're going to teach students how to figure out what that purpose is. Are they writing a short story to entertain their readers? Are they writing to inform them of something? And so, again, usually a short story is only read in one sitting. And I love this rudimentary short story outline. This is something that we follow, that you put a man in a tree, and that means you start with a clear situation. See, the man is in the tree. That means he has a problem. He has to get out of the tree that has to be resolved. And so we give him a problem. We throw stones at him. And so these are the problems or the misunderstandings. So as the writers, they create these conflicts. And so it could be a lost opportunity, it could be a misunderstanding, it could even be a catastrophe. And as after we throw stones at him, we have to figure out how he's going to get down from the tree. And so solving the conflict in some way. It can have a happy ending, a sad ending, a surprising ending, various endings. And so we kind of teach according to this outline, and we teach students those skills to be able to put their man in a tree and get them down. And here are some skills that they learn. Again, they learn the story arc, but they learn a little bit more about how to plot events, right? More about the exposition, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, resolution. Also, very concise writing as well, because it's still considered a brief piece. But we get a little bit more involved in rhetorical devices like flashbacks and foreshadowing, and how to develop fuller characters. And thematic writing is pretty big, right? So what is the overarching message, and we teach students how to create those thematic statements before they even write their stories. They kind of come up with their mission statement and their thematic statement that this is what I want my big message to be. And then they create details and storylines and plots to feed that thematic purpose. And so it has a lot of that deductive reasoning skills that they have to use to be able to create these stories. So this class is not just about writing, and learning those skills, which again are very heavy as well. But there are also these other skills, deductive reasoning, critical thinking, that they can apply to many different areas of their lives. And so I did not put a sample story from one of our students, but we have many samples of those. But just that short stories are very famous, and that we've been reading short stories forever. And, this one's called The Gift of the Magi. And if you have a chance to read this short story, this was by a famous writer. And so this tells the story of two people, Della and her husband who both save up money to because they're both poor to get each other a present for Christmas. And I won't give too much of it away, but it has a lot of irony in it and um, a lot of surprise elements in here, but also uh, really great characterization and development of those characters and what they learn about themselves as they selflessly try to provide for their spouse. In week number 7, we're going to do, this is something that's pretty fun, but it's writing with humor. And so I let the students choose any genre that they want. It can be science fiction, it can be a short story. They can do anything they want, but they have to include humor elements. Maybe it's a funny character. We'll go over the 5 elements of humor. Funny characters, sarcasm, exaggeration, dialogue, unexpected actions. Now, I know that humor varies from culture to culture. What's funny in China may not be funny in America or be considered that way, or what's funny in America may not be considered funny in China. But we're going to look at some of those elements that have to do with writing in particular and come to some agreements on those. And so, again, we're going to look at the overarching theme that's true to the human condition and give characters at least a percentage of human qualities, along with maybe even some of those stereotype qualities of that make them kind of human. And if they can do characters who are humans, or they can even do characters who are animals, but we'll talk about that later if they would prefer to do some sort of fable, because that also has a moral element in there. And so it's just a really fun way of exploring a rhetorical device of humor. And it's something, again, that students really appreciate, and we have a really good time with this piece. We also go over some of those skills of irony, incongruity, ambiguity, imagery, opposites, also the plotting of the stories, the satire, and hyperbole, which means exaggeration. I also love this benign violation theory, which is when we think something is funny when when it violates our sense of what is okay, but also benign enough not to offend anyone too badly, right? And so we'll kind of take a look at that violation theory. I just thought it was really fun, and it actually comes in the form of a book, The Humor Code, by Peter McGraw and Joel Warner. So if you think something's funny, this particular book explains. Lost everybody. Technical difficulties. Uh-oh, we had a little bit of technical difficulty. It kind of kicked me out of here. Is everyone back on? I hope everybody's still here. Okay. And so we've had students who write about very humorous situations. And so we can give you some examples of those. And again, um, oh, gotcha. Okay. And so writing, our last session that we go over is a 1-act play, which is drama. And so again, this is a pretty fun piece, but it's also a little bit more challenging. And so plays are meant to be acted on the stage, but also you can write a play for people to read. And so we're going to talk about where that word comes from, how to put together dialogue, which is a huge skill that they learn in writing a play. And a drama, if you think about it, if you watch a series on Netflix, right, or if you students watch TV or they watch clips on YouTube, even sometimes it's written before it's acted out. So even people who have YouTube channels might sit down and write a script for those YouTube channels. And so writing still becomes relevant. It's something that you might write a script for. And so it's kind of how to bring and prepare and bring that play to life. And so for our last lesson of the 8-week session, We learn Aristotle's definition of drama. We learn how to create good characters, memorable characters. We talk about script writing. Maybe your student later on wants to write movies even, right? And so you can write film scripts. And so again, original writing is not dead. We learn how to write dialogue, story arcs, and crisis points. And as you can see, this is a a photograph of a drawing of a climax and a story arc. That looks a lot like the short stories and novels, but you still have to do it in that kind of form. And so this is what, if you take a look here, this is from one of our students who did do really well. Um, oh, okay. And so this is what this would kind of look like. All right. So what does Ivymind offer if you sign on for us? These are just little examples. This is not the full lessons. We definitely go a lot deeper with everything. And so we provide mentoring, one-on-one mentoring, and full feedback for your students. We know what it takes to to submit your works to places. We know what it takes to create these big lessons. And again, to help your student, even if they're young, even if their age is 13 to 18 or whatever the case may be, they can learn how to um, create these pieces, submit them to these larger platforms, add to their resumes. And what we do is we provide specialized feedback, and we have lessons that not many other companies offer in terms of every year they've gotten better and better and better, and they've improved their writing, and they submit with the confidence they need uh, to submit their pieces and publish. And so we really hope at Ivymind to see you there. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Miss Betty or Miss Anna, Miss Shin, with any questions. And I really hope to see you all there and hope you sign on for Ivymind. This is just one of the many, many programs that we offer. And again, we're very invested in providing specific specialized feedback for your students and being able to be by their side throughout this whole process as they prepare for their future and for college and so forth. And so I'll leave you with a quote. All you have to do is write one true sentence, write the truest sentence that you know by Ernest Hemingway. And then if you have any questions, I'll stay around. And you can feel free to ask Miss Anna or me any questions that you might have. Thank you so much. I know it was a long presentation, but again, it gets each class for those 8 weeks is a lot more involved than that. That was only touching the surface of what we have to offer. And again, very specific one-on-one feedback will be given to students who sign on with Ivymind. Thank you so much for allowing me to present.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sarah. Yeah, I do have two questions from the students. And the first question is that for students specifically interested in one genre, for example, the poetry, would you have some, suggestions or resources for them to explore deeper into that specific genre?
Yes, I personally have written and published many different types of poems. So I'll be sharing my own works as a published writer in that regard. But also we will delve into classical poetry throughout the ages. So we're going to look at historical pieces as well and break those apart and analyze those.
Mhm. And the other question is about the science fiction. About this kind of genre, is that included in this course, or are there any other resources can help students in this regard?
Science fiction can be in the form of flash fiction or short story or humor writing. So actually, it's a sub-genre of those things. So if they want, I will touch upon the science fiction. when I teach the fictional works. Yes, I will touch upon what that entails because I
Okay.
know a lot of young people love science fiction. So
Mm,
I will show them what effective science fiction has looked like based on those patterns that have been published.
okay, thank you. And the other question is that every week, except for the lecture time, how much time student will need for them to write an essay? Like they want to
Well,
time commitment. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we would like them to get, and I don't know how to explain this, Anna, maybe you can explain it better, but I would like them to have a rough draft. So
Mm,
like that first draft within that week, they should be submitting something, even if it's ugly. I don't know how to say that, but even if it's ugly, we will give them feedback and
mm,
then they can work on it, the next week after that and maybe finalize after 2 weeks. But that first week, they
mm,
should try to get a rough draft down so we can mentor them along the way. It doesn't have to be perfect, but they have to submit something in that first week. And we are very serious about submitting something, even if it's not beautiful yet. But it will be once we give them feedback and help
mm,
them work along the way. I hope that answers the question. That's kind of a
mm.
complex question, I guess. But we will
Yeah.
require that they submit something each week, every
Mm,
week. So at the end of this whole thing, they have 8 pieces.
okay, thank you. And the other question is that do we have any prerequisite for students to enter this class? For example, the vocabulary, is there any prerequisite?
I feel that this is E for everyone. This is for everyone.
Mm,
If there needs to be clarification, let's say of a vocabulary word or something, I will definitely be able to teach everyone in that way. If Betty would like them to take a more basics writing class, in particular for their specific student, that's
mm,
something they can talk to Betty about if they feel like this is
mm,
too much. But I will not teach in
mm,
such a complex manner that they will not understand. I
mm,
feel that, you know what I mean? I can teach to every
mm.
type of person at every level.
Yeah, thank you. And also comes from this parent is that he said his student is very good at in creative writing in Chinese, but is not very confident in writing English, especially creative writing. So she would like to know how would you help students on that?
I see that very often, and I can usually tell because I've only worked with Chinese students for 12 years. It's been a long time, only Chinese students. So I know what some of those mistakes are that are made when they translate, right? Things like that. And so that will be a very special case. So what I'll do is when they submit their first one, I would like them to translate it over though, and then we will teach them how to write it in English in a better way. And so what's fun about this is the feedback that they get. They'll learn English idioms, right? They'll learn ways of saying things on paper, right? That they may have never known before. So that's why the feedback is perfect for them because, if even if they're not really great at writing in English, giving them that feedback is going to teach them how to write in English even better. So for those type of students, I think it would be just even better for them to take this class, actually.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and there's another question is that what is the assignment would look like? Would you assign students to some reading, assign some reading to the students? What would be the readings and what would you recommend students to read, like before the class, after class, or in class?
Well, after each class, they will get a worksheet that
Mm,
will have the guidelines for the assignment as well as a sample. So it'll be a famous sample usually. When I say famous, I get a published piece. So they will have an example right there on their guideline sheet. It will be actually more than a page long, maybe a couple pages of what their assignment is and an example of it, and then a list of resources that they can look up online to because most stories, honestly, Anna, are available online. So,
mm,
they don't necessarily have to order books all the time.
mm,
They can look up published pieces that I will give them as a reference. So after each class, they will have a guideline sheet for writing and samples.
mhm. Okay, thank you.
Hmm.
Another question from the parent is that do you have a number each year, for example, percentage of the students' work get published or get award?
Well, students do this throughout their years with Ivymind. So if they start with Ivymind when they're, let's say, 13, I don't know how you want to answer this, Anna, but they're usually, when they sign on with us, Anna, they're usually assigned a counselor. And
Mm,
so if they take this class every year, actually,
mm.
they could be submitting every year if they want to. It's not just one and done. You
Yeah,
know,
as
this
far
is
as I
something.
know, last year, one of my students took your class and he get a silver prize in the personal essay. Yeah.
Yes. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, they really love this class. And so,
Mhm.
percentage wise, that might be something to ask Betty. I'm not really sure all the time because they go off to different counselors, right? And so
Mhm.
they can always talk to me later, but I'm not the one, they're going to talk to late.
Understood.
They're going to be with counselors. Yeah.
Understood. Okay. Thank you.
But it's a good question. I would say a large percentage. We even had a student who wrote about microaggressions and
Mm,
got honorable mention out of like 60,000 applications to New York Times. And that was a huge deal.
mm,
Wrote a really great piece on microaggressions and even just getting an honorable mention. But a lot of our students get gold
mm,
keys for Scholastic. So
mm,
I would say a large percentage really
mhm,
goes on to publish. But even
mhm.
if it's not Scholastic, right? It could be other programs. We have a list of places they could publish.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hmm.
And the other question is that would you keep teaching during the whole class, or there will be some time for interaction between you and the students?
Oh, yes, it's very interactive, actually. I do stop after certain things. It's not just me lecturing. I don't really believe in that, in just lecturing. But I have to stop and talk to students and try to get them to respond so I can see what they're, and I stay after class in case they have questions or need specific
Mm,
instruction.
okay. Thank you.
Good questions.
Yeah, let me see. Are there any other questions? Mm, I think for now it's good. I don't see any questions.
And it might be, they might want to know that as an instructor, I'm also, Ivymind essay mentor for college essays. Maybe just tell them that. And, that I help students get into Harvard and other places. I have a
Mm,
lot of experience with writing in general. And
mm,
so it really excites me, you know what I mean, to be a part of this process and to
mm,
see these students for over a decade, just find these successes in their writing. So I just want them to know that and that I've worked with many different types of people with at many different skill levels. As a master class, like I said, it would be up to Betty and Ivy Mind administration to figure out, if a student should take it, should they take the basics first?
mm,
But just so they know, I have that experience with all types of writers.
mm,
And that, yeah, it's just, this is the best, one of my favorite programs with Ivy Mind is the
mm.
writing programs.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time today.
And tell them it's not a dead art, no matter what, with ChatGPT. It doesn't matter. This is still relevant. It is. People
Yes.
still care about writing,
Yeah,
just so they know.
it is.
All right.
Yeah, it is. Thank you so much. Thank you so much,
Thank
Miss
you,
Sarah.
Anna.
Yeah, I look
Thank
forward to meeting you again. Thank you.
definitely, Anna. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
大家好，我们今天的这个直播就到此结束。然后大家关于这个课程有其他的问题，都可以来联系我，加一下我的微信，然后我会给大家解答。谢谢大家。